Okay, all of you, please keep yourself muted. If anyone wants to talk, request you to please raise your hand. Okay, so very good evening, all of you. And today's topic that we're going to discuss is credit risk assessment using Altman Z Score. Okay, so before I begin to explain to you the Altman Z Score model, to understand, let me first give you an idea of what is credit risk. Okay, what is credit risk? So usually credit risk is something that's a problem for a lender. Okay, maybe a bank, an NBFC, or even a company which might have lent money. So before the lender decides to extend the credit, the lender would like to understand the risk he's taking. So in terms of whether we are going to get back the loans that we have given, or what is the probability that we might not get back the full amount and things like that. But to talk in a more detailed manner, credit risk is basically the probability. Okay, it's a probability of a few things. It is a probability that the borrower, okay, does not pay the interest or the part principal or full principal also. So what is the probability that the borrower does not pay the interest or the principal? Or sometimes when you're talking about a B2B kind of a lending, what is the probability that the borrower's credit rating is downgraded? Okay, so by the way, what is a credit rating, guys? Credit rating basically refers to a kind of a scoring or a rating done by a professional credit rating agency based on the fundamental financial data, and of course the industry data used of a certain company. All right, our credit risk could also be the probability that the borrower, okay, will ask for extension of extension for payment. Okay, so which in itself is not a default, yes, but the very fact that the borrower is asking for an extension kind of is a risk for us. Okay, that's another way that you can understand credit risk. You can also understand credit risk as a probability that the borrower files for bankruptcy. Okay, so like this you can understand credit risk from many angles. Okay, credit risk in itself can be of various types. You can talk about credit risk as a default risk, or a recovery risk, exposure risk, migration risk, spread risk, liquidity risk, and whatnot. There are many words for that. So maybe that could be a different discussion altogether. The today's topics focus is how we can establish the credit risk of a company. Okay, let's assume that we have a company and we want to determine the probability that the company will fail in its payments, or most importantly, the probability that the company will go into bankruptcy. Okay, so for that we use this model called Altman Z Score model. It's a very popular model. If you type in Google, you will find a lot of web pages explaining this. There are banks and NBFCs and various traditional lenders have been using Altman Z Score as one of the criteria to determine underwrite the loan application. That was a uh, that was a model. So in this case, I'm going to demonstrate you how we can use Altman Z Score to determine the credit risk of a company. Okay, for that we need the financial statement information. I'm directly jumping into the explanation. So first, I'm going to take the information that I require to perform Altman Z Score. Okay, a little bit of understanding of your financial statements is required for us to work on this. So I hope that all of you have an understanding of financial statements, how the financial statements look like for a company. Let's assume that there is a company whose current assets are around 76,693 crores, okay, or millions, whatever is the number that you want to assume. So I'm going to keep it neutral. So let's say the company's current liabilities are around 40,616. Okay, so company has total assets of around 1 crore 39 lakh 193. Okay, these are all the information that I need to extract from the company's latest financial statements. Okay, one more information that I need is retained earnings. So for a certain company which I'm analyzing here, I am not mentioning the company name here, but these are all real numbers of a company. So the retained earnings is 84,470. The company's operating profits, EBIT, is around 26,554 crores. And the market capitalization, market cap basically refers to number of shares into current market price of the company, is around 6,99,532 crores. And the company has a total liabilities or total debt of 51,051 crores. And company sales is around 2,48,195 crores. So these are the information that we require to perform the analysis of Altman Z score. Okay, so let's assume that we are able to collect this information. Now, how do we go about calculating this? First, let me open a website, any website which can give us the information about Altman Z score. All right. So I have a website of Bajaj Finserv. I think probably we can use that only. Okay, so there is an explanation given. Okay, so maybe this part, if you focus here, you can open any website and you can refer this. So you see Altman Z score, the formula given by Edward Altman. By the way, Edward Altman is a financial mathematician. He has basically researched on close to 700 companies which went bankrupt and tried to, using certain statistical tests like discriminant analysis, he tried to determine was there any ratio that we could use that could help us predict the company's bankruptcy. Okay, so this was a kind of a back testing that he has done, that too in 1960s, but since 1960s till recently there have been a lot of back testing that has been done on this model, and the model is said to have achieved an accuracy of close to 90% in predicting the bankruptcy. Okay, how does it work? So you basically need to calculate 5 ratios based on the information we have, 5 ratios, and all those ratios have to be multiplied with the coefficients given by the Altman 1.2, 1.4, 3.3, 0.6, and 1. So this will give me one score for the company. Okay, let's first do that. Okay, let's first calculate that. So what ratios do we need? I'm going to type it here. We need working capital divided by total assets. All right. Working capital divided by total assets. Okay, this is one ratio. Retained earnings by total assets. That's another second ratio. Retained earnings by total assets. By now, I think you know that all the information required for us to calculate these ratios are collected here. All right. EBIT by total assets. EBIT by total assets. Equity market value by total liabilities. Okay, which is in our case market cap divided by total liabilities. All right, and the sales by total assets. Sales by total assets. Okay, so let me calculate these ratios first. So working capital, by the way, working capital is nothing but current assets minus current liabilities. Okay, so I'm going to calculate these ratios for this company. Working capital is current assets minus current liabilities divided by the total assets, which is here. You with me? I'm just calculating these ratios as it is. Retained earnings by total assets. Retained earnings divided by total assets. EBIT by total assets. EBIT by total assets. All right. Market cap by total liabilities. Market cap by total liabilities. Sales by total assets. Sales by total assets. Perfect. Okay. These are the ratios. These are the ratios that we have calculated for this company. These are the ratios that are required for us to compute the Altman Z score. Okay. So these are the ratios. By the way, I call these ratios. These are values. And then I will take the coefficients. Okay. Given by Altman. What is the coefficients is given? 1.2 for the working capital ratio. Okay. 1.2. 1.4 for the retained earnings ratio. 1.4. And 3.3, 0.6, and 1. 3.3, 0.6, and 1. Okay, so all we have to do is we have to multiply 1.2 into 0.26 plus 1.4 multiplied by 0.61, etc., etc. That would give me the Z score, the Z score. So let me put a sum function, some product function, sum product of the values multiplied by the coefficients. So the Altman Z score for this company that we are working on is around 11.80, 11.80. Okay. Now, how do we interpret this? How do we interpret this? General interpretation. I'll call it general interpretation. This is what generally, even those who don't understand statistics, what they do is as a thumb rule, they use this rule. Okay, let me take you through this. Yeah. Can you see this part? If the Altman Z score is below 1.81, the company is in financial distress, and within the next 2 years, there is a high possibility that the company will go for bankruptcy. On the other hand, if the Altman Z score is between 1.81 to 2.99, then the company is in financial gray area with a moderate risk of bankruptcy. You have to be careful before you lend to this company. Or if the company is more than 2.99, then we say the company is financially safe with a low possibility of bankruptcy. So naturally, this company is 11.8. So therefore, the general interpretation is the company is financially safe. Okay. So what we will do is let's put a small if function. If this number is less than 1.8, 1.8, so bankrupt. If the ratio is less than or equal to 2.99, yeah, we'll call this gray. Otherwise, we'll call it safe. Okay, perfect. So this company, according to me, is safer based on the general interpretation. We'll go one step further here. We'll try to assess what is called as probability of default. Probability of default. Okay, so here I would like to explain to you what the Z score actually means. Okay, so for instance, if I'm opening a website called Math is Fun that gives me an interactive normal distribution table. So this is basically how any large data can be distributed. Okay. So let's imagine the company's, the probability. Basically, what is probability of bankruptcy? What is probability of bankruptcy? Probability of bankruptcy is nothing but probability of your total assets being more than total liabilities. Correct? This is basically the probability. Okay, what is the probability by total asset? So if you take all those probabilities and plot it here. Okay, so now let's say for example, my Z score, for argument's sake, I'll put it as 1.6 just to show you. Let's assume the Z score is 1.6. Let's assume Z score is 1.6. Remember, according to general interpretation, it is bankrupt. So 1.6, can you watch this Z score here, my arrow here? If I move up to 1.6 here, so come somewhere here. Right. Okay. What does this mean? This means that up to there is a 94.52% probability that the company's assets will be more than its liabilities. There is a 94.52% probability that the company will not default. That is when the Z score is 1.6. Say, let's say if the Z score is 1.8, that cutoff. So that means that 1.8 cutoff basically means 96.41% probability that the company will not default. That means what is the default probability? 100 minus 96.41. 100 minus 96.41 is the probability of default. All right. So in our company's case, it's way above 11.8. So therefore, it's almost 99.9999% probability is there that the company will not default. Okay. So therefore, probability of default. So how do I find, by the way, let's get, okay. How do I find the probability of default? Okay. So ideally what we do is we take a Z table and we search for that probability value, right? But thankfully, Excel gives us this information, sorry, this function called norms_inv. Basically, it inverses norms distributions inverse. That means if I give the Z score, it will give me the probability. So I'll use norms in and give the Z score here. Okay, Z score here. Yeah. So, oh, I'm sorry. Norms dist, norms dist, norms did give the Z score. It will give you the probability. So the probability is almost 100%. You know, if I go a little more extra zeros, maybe it might show me some somewhere 99.99, but otherwise largely this company is safer. Okay. By the way, it's not probability default, it's probability of survival. So I'll do 1 minus norms test. So 0%, almost 0%. Let's assume the Z score is 1.6 for a company. Then you see it shows me the probability default as 5 point something. Yeah, 5.48%. Okay. Or maybe if it is 2.4, so 0.82%. Right. But anyways, in this company's case, it is 11.8. So therefore, the probability of default is 0%. So this is how I am assessing the credit risk of a company. Right. So you can have your own cutoff, level. For example, your cutoff level could be probability of default should be less than 5%. Only then we will extend the credit to this company. So based on that, you can take a decision. All right. So thank you for joining. All right.